loves. I am Tila B, the modern realtor, and I am here with some special guests. I am at Universal Title with our title partners, and today I wanted to bring you guys some information about title. Before I became a realtor, I did not know what title was. I knew that there was a title person involved in the transaction, but what they did, I had no clue. So as I was doing my transaction, helping my husband and I buy our house along with our realtor, I began to understand what title was because I had to talk to them because I was purchasing a house. So I have two special guests here. I will let them introduce themselves, and then we're just gonna have a casual conversation about title.
I'm Dennis Young. I'm the Business Development Associate here at Universal Title in White Marsh.
And I'm Jason Setty. I'm the Managing Attorney in the Universal Title office here in White Marsh. I've had the pleasure of working with Tila quite a bit over the last couple of years, so really looking forward to this.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for allowing me to interview you. I really do appreciate it.
Sure.
So what I want to do for my followers and for my clients is to give them as much education and information possible about real estate. And I noticed that a lot of us don't understand what title is and why title is important to a transaction. So can you guys give us a little bit about what title is and how you guys help work through a transaction to get a person into a home?
Sure. I'll jump in on that one. So title is the proof that you own the house that you're buying, basically. It is, so when someone says, I'm entitled to my home, or, I have the title to my home, what that means is you own your home and you have basically the proof to show for it. In Maryland and in, I'm pretty sure every jurisdiction, the land transactions, the deeds that are recorded and everything, track the title from current owner all the way back to whenever the records start. So that you can always tell who the owner is. What title does is shows and says, yes, I'm the owner, and then there's some specific special title insurance, which I'm sure we'll get to at some point, that basically is insurance saying that, yep, you are the owner because we've checked and we can confirm all that. So title is proof that you own the house. People will say, I've got the title. What they mean sometimes is the deed. The deed is a legal document.
Mm-hmm. So why is it important that you have that deed to your home? So we know that we're purchasing a property and we know that we have to say that we have some proof that it's ours. So can you just give maybe some scenarios of what could happen or what does happen sometimes in the back?
The deed is your physical proof that you own your house. It is, otherwise anybody could say, well, I own this piece of property, right? Tila could go over to her next door neighbor's house and say, I own this instead of you. And, if there wasn't any record, who would know? Mm-hmm. The purpose of title and the purpose of the deed is to say, no, this is the legal proof that I own this house. And there are certain things on the deed that demonstrate that the person that was selling the house to you owned that house. Mm-hmm. And then the deed, as it's recorded, is your proof that you own the house. Deeds are recorded in the land records, which are public records. In each jurisdiction has its own land records in Maryland. So Baltimore City has its own, Baltimore County has its own. So once that deed is recorded, that shows officially in the public record who owns that piece of property. So that's the point of the deed.
Gotcha. So we talked a little bit about insurance. Mm-hmm. So what does insurance protect you from?
So title insurance is a specific type of insurance. Title insurance, the way I usually explain it at settlement is everyone understands insurance. Insurance protects you against a risk. Mm-hmm. So title insurance protects you against a very specific risk, which is that someone has a claim to own all of your property or all or part of your property, or that someone can come forward and say, the risk that someone can come forward and say that because you own this house, you owe them money for something that was done on the house prior to when you purchased it. So title insurance protects you against that. As part of our process, we review the land records going back 60 years to track who's owned the property. We also check to see if previous owners had any judgments or any liens against them. If there were, we resolve them at settlement so that then we issue a title insurance policy that says, we've reviewed everything, we've paid anything that needs to be paid, there are no liens, and we have demonstrable proof that you are the owner of this property. So then, if somebody does knock on your door 2 years after you purchase your house and they say, I own part of your backyard, you've got an insurance policy that we've issued that says that they don't own part of your backyard. That's what the insurance is for. It's peace of mind.
Gotcha.
Yep.
So Jason just said that we need title insurance because it protects us from anything that the previous owners may have had. Maybe they've had any work done on the property and then they didn't pay whomever the construction workers were, or maybe there was a family dispute between the previous owners and it wasn't handled properly before you got the property. So it just makes sure that you get your property free and clear.
Correct.
Gotcha.
And title insurance is a one-time thing. So everyone's familiar with, car insurance, health insurance, all those insurances that you pay every month or you pay every year. Title insurance is a one-time thing. The premium for the policy that we issue is based on the purchase price. Those rates are regulated. They're set by the state. We can't change them. They're based on what the purchase price is.
Okay.
And then you pay for the title insurance as part of settlement. And then you will never pay for owner's title insurance again for as long as you own that property. So the insurance protects you from the date of settlement for as long as you own it against anything that could come up before you bought it, and you never have to pay for it more than one time.
Well, thank you for saying that, because I was going to ask, because you pay for it one time, does that mean that there's a set amount of time that this title insurance is enforced, but you pay one time and it lasts throughout the life of the time that you own the property?
Right, as long as you own it, you're protected.
Nice.
Yep.
Okay. So I did want to talk to you guys and get a little deep into ground rent.
Okay.
So a lot of the properties in Baltimore City have ground rent attached to the property. I didn't know what ground rent was, and our property did have ground rent, but I knew that I didn't want it. Like, I did not want to take that into my ownership just because it just felt like something that I just needed to be done away with, if
Sure.
that makes sense. So can you guys tell us what ground rent is and why it exists?
Do you want to start? Do you want me to jump in on it, Dennis?
You can jump in. I'm not sure
Okay.
why it exists, the part of it.
I'll tell you why. Follow the
Sorry.
money. So ground rent exists in Maryland, like Tila said, mostly around Baltimore City. There are a few other places in the country that have it. It's not unique to Maryland, but it certainly is predominantly is here as opposed to elsewhere. Ground rent originally started in England, 1700s. It was a way for somebody to own land and then somebody to live there and basically pay them a rent without a formal lease or anything like that. It's similar to renting your home or renting an apartment, but it's slightly different. It came back in the 50s and 60s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, when people came back from war and they wanted to buy a house, but they didn't have a lot of money. So people would create these ground rents, sell somebody, the home, and then they would keep the ground underneath it. So the way it works, there's two ways to own property in Maryland. I'm trying to think of the easiest way to explain this. So you can own property in Maryland fee simple. And what that means is you own the improvements and you own the ground underneath it. A leasehold, which is what ground rent is, a leasehold estate is when you own the improvements, but someone else technically owns the ground underneath your home. In that instance, that's what we're talking about when we talk about ground rent. So in that instance, when you're buying your home, you're buying your home. Like, you own the house, but the ground underneath it is owned by someone else. So this was created, basically as a way for property developers to build these homes, get paid for developing the homes, and then keep a recurring stream of income. So when I say follow the money, that's exactly what I mean. Ground rent is, it's something that we see all the time. It's, there's a lot of city properties, some Baltimore County properties, depending on where in the county you are, also have ground rent.
Nice. I like the way you explained that. It was
Okay.
kind of like straightforward and to the point. So he did talk about follow the money, and you guys know that I talked to you a lot about being an investor and having different streams of income. So with Jason saying follow the money, guys, like, that's another stream of income that you guys can get into in real estate, like investing in ground rent. So just wanted to give you guys that tip there. So back to the ground rent. Can you talk to us about ground rent redemption. So if I'm a buyer
Sure.
and I love this property and I see that it has ground rent, I'm not gonna freak out because we just told them that, you know, it's not a huge thing, but it's something that might come up in a property in Baltimore City. What questions should I be asking my title rep about ground rent?
So, ground rent, I feel like for buyers, ground rent is not necessarily, shouldn't be a scary thing. Typically, the cost to pay if you do decide to keep the ground rent and pay it is usually somewhere between $84 and $150 every year. That's it. And you get to pay it twice a year. So as a buyer, what you would want to know when you're looking at this ground rent property is this property registered with the state? Ground rent, Tila mentioned redemption. So redemption means you buy the ground rent out from who owns the ground rent. When you buy a property that has ground rent, you buy the leasehold interest, but the ground rent owner, who you have to pay the ground rent to, owns the ground underneath, the ground underneath the home that you're buying. And so that's what the ground rent is. You're paying to basically lease that ground where your house is. But you own the house. It's no real different than if you were buying a house without ground rent, except you have to make these payments. So if you decide you want to redeem, there are a couple of different things that you would need to know. One is you need to know, is the property registered? In the state of Maryland after 2012, 2000, something like that, all of the ground rents in the state are required to be registered with the state of Maryland, the State Department of Assessments and Taxation. If they're not registered, so what registration does is it allows the ground rent owner, if they're not getting paid the ground rent that's due on that property from whoever owns the home, registration allows that ground rent owner to then file in the courts to get paid for it. If it's not registered, you don't have to pay that ground rent, basically. It's still there, it never goes away unless you redeem it, but it's still there. So what you would want to know is is this ground rent registered? Another question that you'd want to know is, you'd want to know the answer to, and as you're like talking with Tila and you're talking to your lender and all that kind of stuff, if you're looking at a ground rent property, ask your lender, how do you guys handle ground rent? Some lenders, if the ground rent is registered, most everybody's okay with it. If the ground rent is not registered, some lenders require redemption. So you'd want to know that going in. For properties that are registered, the redemption process is fairly straightforward because we know who owns the ground rent. That's the purpose of the registration. We reach out to them, or you can reach out to them, you being the buyer, can reach out to them and say, hey, I want to redeem my ground rent. Can you send me a statement? If you express that you want to redeem your ground rent in the state of Maryland, the ground rent owners have to allow you to do so if you pay what's owing, if you paid what's due. If the property is not registered, you have to go through the Department of Assessments and Taxation and kind of go through a formal administrative process. Takes a little bit more time, costs potentially kind of about the same. It's a little bit less to go through SDAT than it is usually to pay the ground rent owner. But either way, you have the ability to redeem.
Did you want to add anything?
I was just going to say, if you want to just to back up to know if it is registered or not registered, SDAT.gov is where you look that up.
Good.
You simply go on and you select Baltimore City, Baltimore County, wherever it's located, type in the address, and it comes up, and it should be right at the top. There's an item that says it's registered or unregistered.
Gotcha. Thank you for that information. Because sometimes, and even for the other realtors who watch my content, like that's a great resource to have, especially when you're out working with buyers, to know if the ground rent has been registered or not. So do you guys have anything else you want to add about ground rent that like I didn't cover? Because I think that it's an important topic, but it's kind of a straightforward topic.
Yeah, it's not scary. So, I mean, I know years ago when I was looking to buy, I didn't want to buy a property that had ground rent. Mm-hmm. And depending on where you are in the city or where you are in the county, it can be difficult to find properties that don't have ground rent. It's not a scary thing. If it's registered, then you know who you'll make your payments to. We'll give you that information as part of settlement. After settlement, the ground rent owner, we communicate with the ground rent owner as well. They'll reach out to you. And it's a simple matter of sending them a check, or usually it's sending them a check. They don't allow like direct debits or whatever. It's pretty straightforward. If it's not registered, then unless it's registered, you don't have to pay it. So just know that it's always there until it's redeemed. So it's but it's not a scary thing. So don't let it. If you're looking at a house and it's got ground rent and you're not sure about it, it all things being equal, it really doesn't change a whole lot in practice.
Gotcha. Anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. That sums it up.
Perfect. Well, guys, we have learned about ground rent, and we have met some of our title partners. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and put them down in the comment section. And if you have any other questions for Jason and Dennis, go ahead and put them down too. I will tag them in this video so they can monitor the comments. And if you guys have any questions, I'm sure that they will be willing to help answer.
Absolutely.
Great.
Happy to.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for being in my video. I'm going to be with these guys often. We're going to go through title, different topics. Again, if you have anything else you want to know about title, go ahead, put down too, and then we can do a video on it.
Great.
That'll work.
All right. Thanks,
Thanks, Taylor.
guys.